The first warning came not with a bang, but with a whisper of data, a microscopic anomaly that most would have overlooked. Jack Harper's fingers hovered over the holographic display, tracing the quantum interference pattern that danced like a spectral warning across his screens. Outside the reinforced windows of the Advanced Quantum Research Center in Boulder, Colorado, the morning sun cast long shadows across the Rocky Mountains. It was 0:30, the military term for that peculiar time before dawn when the world holds its breath. Jack had long since stopped counting the hours, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the data streams that flickered with an almost imperceptible rhythm. "System, enhance quantum signature," he muttered, his voice raspy from hours of continuous work. The holographic display expanded, revealing a complex lattice of quantum entanglement that most would have dismissed as scientific gibberish. But Jack saw something else, a pattern, a weakness, a potential exploit hidden within the alien communication network. 3 days earlier, the first Zornak ships had appeared near Jupiter, not with the dramatic explosiveness of Hollywood invasion films, but with a calculated, almost bureaucratic precision. They hadn't fired a single weapon. They simply arrived. Massive crystalline structures that defied known physics, hanging in space like predatory insects waiting to strike. Global panic had been immediate. Stock markets plummeted. Communications networks went into overdrive. Military installations worldwide locked down. But Jack Harper saw beyond the immediate terror. A notification pinged on his secondary screen. Emma Chen, his lead research assistant, had just accessed the secure network from the secondary lab. Her message was brief and encrypted. "Boss, you're going to want to see this." Jack's mind raced. The Zornak were unlike any threat humanity had ever encountered. Initial scans showed technology centuries beyond human capability. Their ships could manipulate space-time, their weapons could disintegrate matter at the atomic level, and their communication networks seemed to defy every known principle of quantum mechanics. But Jack had always been different. Where others saw an insurmountable technological barrier, he saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. His computer chirped again. Live feeds from global observation stations painted a terrifying picture. The Zornak ships weren't just sitting idle. They were scanning. Methodically, precisely. Each movement calculated to the millisecond. Each quantum pulse a data-gathering mechanism that probed Earth's defenses. "They're not preparing to attack," Jack muttered to himself. "They're studying us." The door to his lab burst open. General Marcus Rodriguez, a veteran of multiple international conflict zones, strode in with the intensity of a man who had seen too much and feared even more. "Harper," he barked, "tell me you've got something." Jack didn't look up from his screens. "They're vulnerable, Marcus. More vulnerable than they know." The general's weathered face betrayed a mixture of hope and skepticism. The military had been preparing for a conventional alien invasion. Massive fleets, destructive weapons, the stuff of science fiction. But this was something entirely different. "Explain," Rodriguez demanded. Jack expanded the holographic display. Intricate quantum wavelengths danced between complex mathematical representations. Their communication network is a marvel of engineering. But it's also their greatest weakness. It's so efficient, so perfectly optimized, that it leaves no room for error. Outside, the first rays of dawn began to break over the mountain range. But inside the research center, a different kind of light was dawning. The realization that humanity might have a chance. Emma Chen burst into the room, her tablet displaying a series of complex algorithms. "Jack, look at these quantum interference patterns. They're not random. They're a communication method we've never seen before." General Rodriguez leaned in, decades of military strategy mixing with a growing sense of scientific wonder. "What are you saying, Harper?" Jack's lips curled into a predatory smile. "I'm saying we're not just going to survive. We're going to strike back, and they won't even see it coming." The quantum display continued to pulse, a silent herald of the storm about to be unleashed. A storm that would be fought not with conventional weapons, but with the most powerful force humanity possessed, its collective intelligence. The invasion had begun, but the real war was just getting started. The secure research facility buzzed with an electricity that had nothing to do with its advanced quantum computing systems. Emma Chen's fingers flew across multiple holographic interfaces, each screen displaying a different aspect of the alien communication network. They were slowly, painstakingly, beginning to understand. "It's like watching a symphony of information," she muttered, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and underlying terror. Michael Wong leaned over her shoulder, a thermal coffee mug balanced precariously between stacks of quantum analysis printouts. His eyes, magnified by thick-rimmed glasses, scanned the intricate data patterns with a predator's intensity. "Not a symphony," he corrected, "more like a machine. A perfect, terrifyingly efficient machine." Jack Harper watched his team work, a half-empty energy drink forgotten on the desk beside him. They had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on a combination of caffeine, determination, and the knowledge that everything depended on their discovery. The breakthrough had come unexpectedly. Most scientific teams would have been overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of the Zornak communication network, but this team was different. They didn't just see data, they saw possibilities. Emma's latest simulation showed something remarkable. The alien network, for all its technological superiority, had a fundamental flaw that no one had noticed. Its quantum entanglement system was so perfectly optimized that it had eliminated all forms of redundancy. Each communication pathway was a single, hyper-efficient thread, beautiful in its simplicity, but catastrophically vulnerable. "Look at this," Emma said, expanding a holographic model that looked like a three-dimensional spider's web made of light. Traditional communication networks have backup systems, multiple pathways, but the Zornak, they've created a network so streamlined that a single disruption could cause a total systemic collapse. Michael zoomed in on a particular junction point. "It's like they've created the perfect sword, so sharp that the slightest nick becomes a fatal wound." Jack understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just a potential weakness. This was a fundamental design flaw that could bring down an entire galactic civilization. A secure video call interrupted their analysis. General Rodriguez's face appeared, looking more tired than any of them had ever seen him. "Report," he commanded. Jack took the lead. "Sir, we've identified a critical vulnerability in the Zornak communication infrastructure. Their quantum network is so perfectly designed that it leaves no room for error or adaptation." The general leaned closer to the screen. "Explain." "Imagine a communication system where every single pathway is the most efficient possible route," Emma interjected. "No backups, no alternative routes. If we can introduce even the slightest disruption, the entire network could potentially unravel." Rodriguez's military mind quickly translated the scientific jargon into strategic potential. "You're saying we could potentially neutralize their entire communication system?" "Not just neutralize," Michael said, a rare smile crossing his face. "We could make it collapse entirely." The implications were staggering. The Zornak had conquered countless civilizations through their technological superiority. Their communication network allowed for instantaneous coordination across hundreds of light years. Entire star systems could be controlled with mathematical precision. And now, humanity had found its weakness. Jack pulled up a global map, showing the network of research facilities and scientific teams that had been quietly assembled. This wasn't just a military operation. It was a global effort that transcended traditional boundaries. Scientists from China, Russia, the United States, India, Brazil, nations that had historically been rivals, were now working as a single unified team. "We'll need to be precise," Jack explained. "One wrong move, and they'll adapt. We get one shot at this." The room fell silent. The weight of their potential discovery hung in the air, a moment of pure human potential. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the most technologically advanced, but they were adaptable, creative, capable of seeing solutions where others saw only complexity. Emma's latest simulation ran, the quantum pathways dancing like living things. Each potential disruption point was a potential salvation for humanity. "We're going to need more computing power," Michael muttered. Jack looked at his team, exhausted, brilliant, determined. "I think I know where to get it." Outside the research facility, the first Zornak ships continued their silent vigil near Jupiter. They had no idea that their own perfection was about to become their greatest weakness. The real war was about to begin, and it would be fought with mathematics, creativity, and an unbreakable human spirit. The world changed overnight. Stock markets froze. Universities emptied their campuses. Research facilities transformed into fortified compounds. Every scientific resource on the planet was redirected toward a single, unprecedented goal: developing a quantum weapon that could potentially save humanity from an alien threat that defied conventional understanding. In Silicon Valley, tech giants suspended all commercial operations. Apple, Google, Microsoft, once fierce competitors, now worked as a unified technological front. Their massive server farms were repurposed into quantum computing clusters. Entire data centers became war rooms, with engineers and scientists working in shifts that blurred the lines between day and night. Dr. Aisha Patel, a quantum computing expert from MIT, found herself coordinating a global network of researchers from a converted underground facility beneath the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Her team represented a microcosm of humanity's last hope, scientists from every corner of the globe, united by a singular purpose. "We're not just building a weapon," she told her exhausted team during a briefing. "We're writing humanity's survival code." The military's role had fundamentally changed. Traditional weapons became secondary to intellectual warfare. Special forces were replaced by teams of mathematicians, quantum physicists, and computer scientists. General Rodriguez oversaw the most unusual military mobilization in human history, a war to be fought with algorithms instead of artillery. Jack Harper's original research team became the core of this global effort. Emma Chen managed international communications, coordinating research across continental time zones. Michael Wong developed security protocols to prevent any potential information leaks. Their personal lives ceased to exist, each of them understanding that the survival of their species hung in the balance. In Beijing, a team of computational linguists worked to decode potential communication patterns in the Zornak quantum network. In Mumbai, quantum encryption experts developed new methods of introducing microscopic uncertainties into alien communication systems. Moscow's top mathematicians created predictive models of potential quantum disruption scenarios. The sacrifices were immense and personal. Families were separated. Children were sent to secure facilities in remote locations. Military and scientific personnel knew they might never return home. Entire cities near critical research centers were quietly evacuated, their populations relocated without explanation. Sarah Rodriguez, General Rodriguez's daughter and a brilliant aerospace engineer, found herself leading a team developing quantum communication interception technologies. Her children were sent to a secure facility in the Rocky Mountains, protected by layers of military and scientific security that made maximum security prisons look like open playgrounds. "We're fighting for their future," she would tell herself during the long nights of continuous work, a photograph of her kids barely visible on a desk covered in complex quantum computing diagrams. The global economy transformed. Governments redirected nearly 80% of their budgets into the research effort. Manufacturing shifted entirely to supporting the quantum warfare initiative. Automotive plants converted to producing specialized computing hardware. Consumer electronics became a distant memory as every technological resource was channeled into humanity's survival strategy. Communication networks operated on a need-to-know basis. The global population knew something significant was happening, but the true nature of the threat remained classified. Rumors spread. Some believed it was a global pandemic, others thought it was a massive cyber attack. The truth was far more extraordinary. In a secure facility beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Jack Harper presented the comprehensive plan to a multinational committee of scientific and military leaders. Holograms displayed the intricate quantum network they hoped to disrupt, each potential intervention point marked with mathematical precision. "We have one shot at this," he explained, his voice steady despite the enormous pressure. "The Zornak won't understand what's happening until it's too late. We're going to use their own communication efficiency against them." The room was silent. Military commanders, scientific leaders, politicians, all understood that this was humanity's most audacious plan. Not a traditional war, but a war of pure intellect. A war where mathematical precision would be more powerful than any conventional weapon. Outside, the first Zornak ships continued their silent vigil near Jupiter. They had no idea that humanity was preparing a strike more devastating than any physical attack, a strike that would be fought in the quantum realm, invisible to traditional sensors, undetectable until the moment of total system collapse. Humanity was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to redefine the very nature of conflict in the universe. And they were just getting started. The quantum weapon took shape in the most unlikely of places, a converted nuclear bunker buried 500 feet beneath the Nevada desert. Reinforced concrete walls lined with advanced quantum dampening materials created a perfect isolation chamber for humanity's most critical project. Michael Wong stood before a wall of holographic displays, his fingers dancing across quantum reactive interfaces that seemed to pulse with an almost living intelligence. Lines of code weren't just text, they were weapons, each algorithm a potential strike against an alien civilization that had never encountered such asymmetric warfare. "It's not about destruction," Michael muttered to himself. "It's about introduction of uncertainty." Emma Chen approached, a thermal coffee mug in one hand and a tablet displaying complex quantum entanglement models in the other. "Uncertainty is our weapon," she confirmed. "We're not trying to break their network. We're going to make it doubt itself." The quantum virus, if it could even be called a virus, was unlike anything in human technological history. Traditional computer viruses attacked specific systems, introduced malware, created predictable disruptions. This was something entirely different. It was a mathematical ghost, a piece of code that would exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, introducing microscopic inconsistencies that would propagate through the entire Zornak communication network. Jack Harper reviewed the latest simulation, his eyes reflecting the complex quantum pathways that danced across the screen. Each potential disruption point was a carefully calculated mathematical weapon. They weren't just writing code. They were composing a symphony of quantum destruction. "Think of it like a precision injection," Jack explained to the team during their daily briefing. "We're not going to blast their network. We're going to introduce the smallest possible quantum inconsistencies. Imagine a perfectly tuned machine where we're adding the most minute grain of sand. One grain won't stop the machine, but millions of grains will eventually cause a complete system failure." General Rodriguez watched the presentation, his military mind translating the scientific complexity into strategic potential. "How undetectable are we talking?" Emma pulled up a visualization. "So undetectable that by the time they realize something's wrong, the entire network will be compromised. We're talking about quantum-level disruptions so small that traditional scanning methods won't even register them." The weapon's design was a testament to human creativity. Unlike the Zornak's hyper-efficient communication network, the quantum virus was intentionally designed with redundancy, adaptability, and unexpected pathways. Where the alien network was a perfectly tuned instrument, humanity's weapon was a jazz ensemble, improvisational, unpredictable, capable of changing its approach in milliseconds. "We're essentially creating a quantum chameleon," Michael explained, expanding a holographic model that showed how the code would adapt and change. "It will look like a normal communication packet to their systems, but each time it passes through a network junction, it introduces the tiniest possible deviation." The team had spent months studying captured Zornak communication fragments. Every piece of intercepted data was a window into an alien technological marvel. Their network was so efficient that it had eliminated nearly all forms of error correction. Each communication pathway was the absolute most efficient route, which meant any disruption would cascade exponentially. Samantha Rodriguez, the aerospace engineer who had been recruited from her previous work on satellite communication systems, brought a unique perspective. It's like they've created a highway system with no emergency lanes, no alternate routes. We're going to introduce just enough quantum uncertainty to make every junction a potential point of failure. The weapon's development wasn't just a technical challenge. It was a philosophical one. They were creating a tool that would fundamentally challenge the Zornak's understanding of communication, of technology, of the very nature of information transfer. Late one night, as the team worked through another marathon session, Jack Harper paused. The weight of what they were doing hung in the air. A weapon so precise, so mathematically elegant, that it could potentially bring down an entire galactic civilization without firing a single conventional shot. "We're not just protecting Earth," he said softly, looking at his team. "We're showing the universe what humanity is capable of." The quantum displays continued to pulse. Mathematical possibilities danced across screens. In this underground bunker, humanity was writing a new chapter of its existence, a chapter that would be read across the stars. The silent weapon was almost ready. The first indication that something was wrong came from the most unexpected place, a routine Zornak communication relay near the Carina Nebula. Lieutenant Kriax, a mid-level communication specialist aboard the Zornak battlecruiser Quantum Apex, noticed the anomaly during a standard system diagnostic, a microscopic temporal shift, so small that it would have been overlooked by any less meticulous observer. But Kriax was nothing if not precise. Network stability at 99.8732%, the ship's quantum communication interface reported. The decimal point seemed to mock the perfection the Zornak prided themselves on. Kriax's translucent membrane-like fingers danced across the holographic interface, running additional diagnostics. Nothing seemed catastrophically wrong. Just off. A quantum whisper of uncertainty that shouldn't exist in their perfectly calibrated communication network. Back on Earth, Jack Harper and his team watched through a complex network of intercepted alien communication fragments. Each monitoring station, spread across hidden facilities on every continent, tracked the subtle changes with growing excitement. "There," Emma Chen said, her finger tracing a nearly imperceptible line on a holographic display. "Do you see it?" Michael Wong leaned in, his breath catching. "It's working. The quantum inconsistency is propagating exactly as we predicted." In another part of the monitoring facility, General Rodriguez studied the data with the intensity of a predator. "Explain it to me like I'm not a quantum physicist," he demanded. Jack smiled, a predatory expression that spoke of months of preparation and calculation. "Imagine we introduced the tiniest possible grain of sand into a perfectly tuned watch. Not enough to stop it immediately, but enough to gradually wear down its precision." The Zornak communication network was their greatest strength and, as humanity had discovered, their ultimate vulnerability. So efficient that it eliminated all redundancies, so perfectly calibrated that any deviation would cascade exponentially. Across multiple star systems, similar anomalies began to surface. A navigation system on a distant mining colony experienced a 0.3-second delay in quantum positioning. A supply ship near the Orion Arm reported a microscopic discrepancy in its communication protocol. Individual incidents, tiny, insignificant, but they were anything but random. On the Quantum Apex, Lieutenant Kriax submitted a preliminary report to the Central Communication Hub. The report itself was a marvel of alien efficiency, precise, detailed, containing every possible metric of the observed anomaly. What Kriax didn't realize was that the report itself was another vector of the quantum weapons spread. Initial hypothesis: the report read in perfect quantum-encoded language. Microscopic temporal inconsistencies detected in communication network. Probability of systemic issue, 0.17%. Recommend full diagnostic. In the hidden monitoring facility, Emma Chen let out a soft laugh. They have no idea, she whispered. The quantum weapon wasn't a traditional virus. It wasn't trying to crash systems or create obvious disruptions. It was far more insidious. Each communication, each diagnostic, each attempt to understand the anomaly would spread the quantum uncertainty further. Samantha Rodriguez pulled up a global map showing the intercepted communication fragments. Tiny red dots began to spread, slowly, almost imperceptibly, across star systems controlled by the Zornak. It's like a virus, Michael observed, but one that spreads through information itself. General Rodriguez understood the strategic brilliance. Traditional warfare would have been suicide against the Zornak's technological superiority. But this was something entirely different. A war fought in the quantum realm, invisible to traditional sensors, undetectable until the moment of total system collapse. On board the Quantum Apex, Lieutenant Kriax ran another diagnostic. The system reported 99.8731% stability, a 0.1% drop that would mean nothing to most. But to a civilization built on absolute precision, it was the first crack in a seemingly invincible facade. Humanity's silent strike had begun. Jack Harper watched the global monitoring screens, understanding that they had just fired the first shot in a war that would be fought with mathematics, with information, with the most unexpected weapon imaginable. Not a weapon of destruction, a weapon of uncertainty. The collapse began slowly, then all at once. In the Zornak Central Command Complex, situated on a massive artificial construct orbiting a neutron star, the first signs of systemic failure manifested as whispers. Quantum communication pathways that once hummed with perfect efficiency now carried microscopic tremors of uncertainty. High Coordinator Vexnell reviewed the initial reports with growing concern. Isolated incidents were mounting. A supply convoy experiencing navigation drift, a military communication network showing unexplained latency, entire planetary defense systems reporting infinitesimal but persistent calculation errors. Explain, Vexnell demanded of the assembled quantum communication specialists. The lead specialist, a being whose entire existence was dedicated to maintaining the perfection of their communication infrastructure, struggled to articulate the inexplicable. The inconsistencies are mathematically impossible, yet they persist. Back on Earth, Jack Harper and his team watched the unfolding scenario through a complex web of intercepted alien communications. Every monitoring station, from a hidden facility in the Andes to a secure bunker beneath the Australian outback, tracked the quantum weapon's progression with scientific precision and barely contained excitement. "It's beautiful," Michael Wong muttered, watching holographic displays that showed the quantum inconsistencies spreading like a subtle infection. "We're not destroying their network. We're making it doubt itself." Emma Chen adjusted the monitoring algorithms, her fingers dancing across quantum reactive interfaces. Each attempt to diagnose the problem is another vector of infection. "They're spreading our weapon for us." The Zornak had conquered countless civilizations through their technological superiority. Their communication network allowed for instantaneous coordination across hundreds of light years. Entire star systems could be controlled with mathematical precision that seemed almost magical to lesser species, and now that network was beginning to unravel. Colonies that had been under Zornak control for generations began to experience subtle but critical failures. A mining operation on a distant moon found its resource extraction algorithms producing incrementally incorrect calculations. A military outpost discovered its quantum positioning systems drifting by microseconds, a time scale so small it would be meaningless to most species, but catastrophic to the precision-obsessed Zornak. General Rodriguez studied the global monitoring screens, his military mind translating the scientific complexity into strategic implications. "They won't understand what's happening," he said. "By the time they realize it's an attack, their entire system will be compromised." Samantha Rodriguez, the aerospace engineer who had become critical to the quantum weapons development, pulled up a visualization showing the weapon's propagation. "It's like a cancer of information," she explained. "Each communication, each diagnostic attempt, each system check becomes another point of potential failure." On the Zornak's central command construct, panic began to spread, a concept entirely foreign to a civilization that prided itself on mathematical certainty. High Coordinator Vexnell ordered a complete systemic review, unaware that each review was another vector for the quantum weapons spread. "Initiate complete network diagnostic." The order went out across multiple star systems. Jack Harper watched the monitoring screens and allowed himself a small smile. "They're helping us now," he said to his team. "Every attempt to fix the problem is making it worse." The quantum weapon wasn't destructive in any traditional sense. It didn't crash systems or create obvious failures. Instead, it introduced the most microscopic levels of uncertainty, tiny deviations that would cascade exponentially through a network designed with no redundancies, no backup systems. Entire planetary defense networks began to show slight but critical failures. Communication relays experienced unexplained latency. Navigation systems developed nearly imperceptible drift. To the Zornak, whose entire civilization was built on absolute precision, these were catastrophic failures. "They designed their network to be perfect," Emma Chen observed. "But perfection leaves no room for adaptation." The human team understood something fundamental that the Zornak had forgotten. True strength comes from flexibility, from the ability to adapt, to absorb uncertainty and transform it. Their weapon wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of intelligence, of communication, of survival itself. In the quantum realm, humanity was rewriting the rules of conflict. And the Zornak had no idea what was happening. The first Zornak investigative fleet emerged from quantum slip space like wounded predators, massive crystalline vessels that once represented the pinnacle of technological superiority, now drifting with uncharacteristic uncertainty. High Coordinator Vexnell's flagship, the Absolute Precision, led the expedition. Its quantum communication arrays, once a marvel of instantaneous interstellar coordination, now pulsed with intermittent signals that defied their civilization's most fundamental principles. "Report," Vexnell demanded, the translator rendering the aliens' complex linguistic vibrations into crisp, almost mechanical English. Lieutenant Kriax, the same communication specialist who had first noticed the quantum anomalies, struggled to compile a coherent report. "Systemic communication inconsistencies persist. Probability matrices are diverging." Those last words, diverging, carried more terror for the Zornak than any declaration of war could. Their entire civilization was built on mathematical precision, on the absolute certainty of quantum communication. Divergence was a concept more horrifying than destruction. On Earth, Jack Harper and his team watched through a complex network of quantum interceptors. The monitoring facility beneath Cheyenne Mountain hummed with anticipation. "They're coming," Emma Chen said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and underlying tension. Michael Wong pulled up the latest simulation models. "They have no idea what's happening. They're trying to diagnose a problem that isn't a problem. It's a weapon." The Zornak fleet's approach was anything but their typical surgical precision. Navigation systems experienced microscopic drift. Communication relays produced fractured, partially corrupted transmissions. What would have been considered catastrophic system failures in their culture were now becoming the norm. General Rodriguez studied the incoming fleet's approach. "They look like they're falling apart," he observed. Samantha Rodriguez, the aerospace engineer who had been critical to developing the quantum weapon, nodded. "Not falling apart. Falling into uncertainty." As the Zornak ships approached the solar system, human monitoring stations tracked every microscopic deviation. Each quantum fluctuation was another piece of evidence of their weapon's effectiveness. The aliens were experiencing something they had never encountered, a fundamental challenge to their understanding of technological communication. On the Absolute Precision's bridge, High Coordinator Vexnell confronted the impossible. Their quantum network, a system so advanced it had conquered countless civilizations, was failing in ways that defied mathematical prediction. "Explain," Vexnall demanded of the ship's quantum communication specialists. The lead specialist's response was a series of complex vibrations that translated to pure uncertainty. "Our systems are experiencing persistent quantum inconsistencies. Diagnostic protocols are insufficient." Insufficient, a word that had never before existed in the Zornak lexicon. Jack Harper understood the psychological warfare they were conducting. This wasn't about destroying the Zornak. It was about making them question their fundamental understanding of technology, of communication, of their place in the universe. They built a network so perfect it became its own vulnerability, Emma Chen explained, pulling up visualization models that showed how each quantum communication attempt was now a potential point of systemic failure. The Zornak investigative fleet's approach became increasingly erratic. Navigation systems that once calculated faster-than-light trajectories with microscopic precision now produced routes that wandered with unexplainable quantum drift. Communication arrays that had coordinated entire galactic operations now produced transmissions filled with microscopic uncertainties. "They're trying to understand," Michael Wong observed. "But understanding is exactly what's spreading our weapon further." As the fleet approached Earth, something became abundantly clear. This was not a traditional confrontation. The Zornak weren't preparing to attack. They were desperately trying to understand a threat they couldn't comprehend. General Rodriguez watched the incoming fleet with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. "They built a communication network with no redundancies," he said. "We just showed them why that's a fatal mistake." The human team had done something unprecedented. They had weaponized uncertainty, transformed mathematical precision into a tool of psychological and technological warfare. The Zornak fleet hung in space near Earth, massive, powerful, yet fundamentally compromised. They had come seeking answers, unaware that their very attempt to find those answers was another vector of humanity's attack. Jack Harper looked at his team. "First contact," he said softly, "is about to get interesting." The silence was deafening. The Zornak fleet hung in space near Earth, its once pristine crystalline hull now showing microscopic fractures of uncertainty. High Coordinator Vexnall stood on the bridge of the absolute precision, experiencing an emotion no Zornak had ever known: complete, absolute vulnerability. Jack Harper stepped forward, the first human to directly communicate with the alien civilization that had threatened to conquer Earth. The United Nations diplomatic team watched from a secure facility, every communication channel monitored, every potential interaction analyzed. "You're wondering how we did it," Jack said, his voice calm, almost clinical. Vexnall's translator rendered a response that was more a quantum vibration than a traditional language. "Incomprehensible. Your method defies our understanding of technological warfare." Emma Chen and Michael Wong stood beside Jack, each representing a different aspect of humanity's intellectual arsenal. They weren't soldiers. They were scientists, thinkers, problem solvers. "We didn't destroy your network," Jack explained. "We made it doubt itself." The fundamental difference between humanity and the Zornak became crystal clear in that moment. The aliens had built a civilization of absolute precision, of mathematical certainty. Humanity had built a civilization of adaptation, of creative problem-solving, of turning limitations into strengths. General Rodriguez watched the interaction, understanding the diplomatic minefield they were navigating. This wasn't just a first contact scenario. This was a fundamental reshaping of galactic power dynamics. Across the solar system, other alien civilizations, those who had watched the Zornak's seemingly unstoppable conquest, began to take notice. The quantum weapon wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a statement. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was redefining the very nature of conflict. "Your network," Emma Chen explained, pulling up holographic displays that showed the quantum weapon's propagation, was so perfectly designed that it eliminated all forms of redundancy. We didn't attack your technology. We introduced uncertainty, and certainty cannot survive uncertainty. The Zornak's entire civilization had been built on the premise that perfect mathematical precision was the ultimate form of power. Humanity just proved that flexibility, creativity, and the ability to embrace uncertainty were far more powerful. Vexnel's response was a complex quantum transmission that translated to a fundamental breakdown of their understanding. You weaponized imperfection. Michael Wong couldn't help but smile. We weaponized adaptability. The diplomatic implications were staggering. The Zornak weren't just defeated. They were philosophically dismantled. An entire civilization built on the concept of absolute mathematical control had been brought to its knees by a species they had considered technologically primitive. Samantha Rodriguez, who had been critical in developing the quantum weapon, understood the deeper implications. This isn't about technology, she said quietly. This is about the nature of intelligence itself. As news spread across known space, other civilizations began to reassess their understanding of humanity. No longer were humans seen as a young, primitive species. They were now viewed as an unpredictable, creative force that could transform any challenge into an opportunity. The Zornak fleet began to disperse, not in defeat, exactly, but in a state of fundamental recalibration. They would need to completely reimagine their technological and philosophical approach to communication, to warfare, to existence itself. Jack Harper stepped back, looking at his team. They had just changed the course of galactic history without firing a single traditional weapon. We didn't win through force, he said to the assembled diplomatic team. We won by understanding that true strength isn't about perfection. It's about the ability to adapt, to find opportunity in uncertainty. The United Nations conference room erupted in a mix of relief, excitement, and profound understanding. This was more than a victory. This was a declaration of humanity's potential. General Rodriguez approached Jack, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. You just rewrote the rules of galactic conflict. Jack looked out the window, where the remnants of the Zornak fleet were slowly dispersing. No, he corrected. We just showed the universe what humanity is capable of when we work together. As the sun set on a day that would be remembered throughout galactic history, humanity stood not as conquerors, but as something far more powerful, innovators, problem solvers, a species that could turn the most fundamental challenges into unexpected opportunities. The silent strike was complete, and the universe would never be the same.